Well, at times, teenagers and young adults can face many challenges at school or maybe even at home. Our next guest is a nationally recognized, award-winning young adult author who has created a teenage and young adult survival guide to help young people navigate through unpleasant experiences, and there are a lot of them. We welcome Steve Simpson to Virginia this morning. Steve, it's a pleasure, my friend.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so this is the fourth book in a series of this young adult. Tell us where this burning desire and this passion to help young adults comes from, Steve.
I write about what I lived through. I was abused, child, and alcoholic. I was suicidal when I was 11. Low self-esteem. I used to be what I call a Z student. I turned around and became an A student. So I share the ways that I survived, and I run a self-help group for 30 years. I run myself, and I share all that knowledge to other people within the books.
This book is Who Am I? It really is unlike any other, really, how-to. There are not a lot of bullet points. It's really a story centered around two young people, Teresa and Steve.
Exactly. Well, even though it's a science fiction book, there's all sorts of hitmen and aliens and all these things, but while they're dealing with these things, they're also dealing with being children of alcoholics, abuse, domestic abuse, one's a foster child. And the unique thing about the book is if any teacher went in front of a classroom and said, I have a book about suicide or child abuse, or being a child of an alcoholic or bullying, no one's going to ask for it. I wouldn't have. So how do you get it to them? The Teenage and Young Adult Survival Handbook is inside Who Am I? So now it camouflages it. Now the child could be simply wanting to read the science fiction part, or in reverse, if you're trying to get that information to a young person without causing friction. They would say, why are you giving this to me?
Right.
Now again, it's camouflage. I know you like science fiction stories, but you pray that while they have it, they'll read the handbook. A teacher could even say, I'm doing a book report on this, everybody, but read the whole thing. The whole idea is it's kind of a camouflage way not to put a spotlight on the child, not to embarrass them, but to get them life-saving information.
Steve, why is it so important to be, instead of reactive, proactive when it comes to things like bullying, abuse, physical, verbal abuse?
Well, it's all plus you have to understand where it comes from. Like many kids, like in school, and you might even have it at work, where you say, why is this person always so sensitive? I said the same joke to everybody else, and he or she is the only one that threw a fit at it. What you may not realize if you're a student is maybe that person's getting verbally abused at home. So by the time they get to school, they're raw. So maybe it wasn't that bad of a joke, but they explode at it like I used to because they just had the same thing happen at home. So that's one of the things I try to point out. People might say, I didn't think of that. So I reverse it. If you see someone overreactive, compliment them instead of teasing them.
Steve, how did you turn it around? You said you went from a Z student all the way to an A student. How do you do that?
Well, I joined like I advocate for. The school social worker, there's 12-step programs you can join, the self-help groups you can. I went to a self-help group, and I saw in that group that the kids who were A students were being called the same names as my father called me. Wait a minute. And I realized it wasn't me, it was him. Then I started studying. I was taken out of the environment. I was in foster care for a little while. Then my mom, God bless her, got her own place away from my father. And being out of the environment and realizing all the things I believed about myself were false. And bit by bit, honor roll, National Junior Honor Society. Then they made me student of the month. And I used to laugh because that same picture would have been a dartboard 2 years ago in the teacher's faculty room. Okay.
It only take a short amount of time of 2 years, you turn your life around.
Absolutely. Yeah. Just not believing things I was told growing up. How many kids today are in special ed classes that may not have to be there? They may not have ADD. You would have labeled me that in 2 seconds. But I wasn't. But when you're getting beat at home or verbally abused all night and you go to school, do you really think you can focus?
No.
And that's what many students today are going through. And they think they're the only one. That's key.
Indeed.
They think the only one that is going through it is them. They don't realize that 1 out of every 5 children is a child of an alcoholic. So in every class, there's a half-dozen kids just like them going through the same thing. But everyone's smiling, they think they're the only ones.
You were saying that you saw the folks that were on the honor roll getting A's and B's, they were being called the same names as well. So they were going through, they might get a good report card, but they're going through the same torment.
A mistake a parent can make is, well, I know my child lived through some abuse, but they do great in school. I'm not going to bring them to therapy. Bad mistake. Many valedictorians are suicidal.
How do we prevent that? If a young child is watching this, a young adult is watching this interview, what are those first quick steps? This is a crisis in our schools, Steve.
Absolutely. One thing I said to people, especially those who are suicidal, I've known many people who are suicidal over the years, mostly young, because of my volunteering and my own self. And there's one common denominator we all have. Those of us that, thank God, did not commit suicide, were all 100% were glad that we didn't. Why? Things always get better. So when you're going through it like I was, I thought it's never going to get better. It wasn't for attention. One of the things I write in the book is I didn't want to die, I just didn't want to live. Again, and people go through it to understand what I was saying. So number one, to know that it can get better. What do? Go to your school social worker. They know more than you think they do. Or local churches, again, have self-help rooms there. Talk to the pastor. Community centers. There's the suicide prevention line, 1-800-273-TALK. National Runaway Switchboard, 1-800-RUNAWAY. There's a lot of sources out there. And also, I stressed, it gets better faster than you think. Because I used to think I can't go through 11 more years of this. It doesn't. It gets better, like you said, much faster than you think.
Well, Steve, you went from Z to A in a short amount of time. We thank you so much for sharing your story, and congratulations on all of your success.
Thank you.
All right, thanks so much, Steve. Once again, Steve Simpson's new project, Who Am I? The Teenage and Young Adult Survival Guide is now available. It is one of 4 that's on the store shelves right now. You can go to our website, WTVR.com/VTM, for more information. Steve, thanks so much, my man.